If you don't believe, what's the point? What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of The Magic Faraway Tree, the latest film from director Ben Gregor, and is based off the books from Enid Blyton. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the kind of realm of stuff like, the Chronicles of Narnia or Paddington or these, British kind of fun, energetic, kind of fantasy style films, Bridge of Terabithia and stuff like that. The Magic Faraway Tree is about a family that moves to the countryside because the father, who's played by Andrew Garfield, loses his job. So he decides he's going to go back to his hometown or whatever and grow tomatoes and do tomato sauce. It's very, very kind of kid friendly, very, family friendly, and kind of its drive and so on and so forth. Well, we have Fran, who's this young girl who actually comes across this thing called the Magic Faraway Tree, which includes these fantastical creatures, these fantastical characters of people like Moonface and Silky and Dame Wash-A-Lot and Saucepan Man and Boom Boom and stuff like that. And it basically is a story about the three kids going to this place, Beth, Joe, and Fran, journeying through this magical landscape of sweets and treats and just kind of, awe-inspiring vistas, I guess you could say. And it basically becomes a story about, a young girl trying to save and help her father and her mother, who's played by Claire Foy, but also bring kids into the mix, like Beth, who's more technology focused, very much a teen. And how do they deal with the parents struggling, and how do they deal with growing up and forgetting what they are? It's similar like Peter Pan and Paddington or Chronicles of Narnia, where it's just this fantastical world with crazy over top characters. So I can't say that I was really excited by this movie, to be fairly honest. Not that I wasn't willing to watch it, but the trailer was okay, I guess. It wasn't that great. It didn't look that great, to be fairly honest. It looked a little too fantastical for my taste, which is weird because I like stuff like Lord of the Rings. But I'm always willing to give these types of movies because they surprise you. Paddington surprised me. I think Paddington 2 is a great film. The Chronicles of Narnia, at least the first one that Andrew Adamson directed, is pretty good. But you never know what you're going to get yourself into with these types of things. You've seen a lot of Disney movies do it. You see a lot of just weird, kind of strange things. But this is a really popular British book, apparently, from Enid Blyton, and is done pretty well over in England and stuff like that. So the question really remains, is this worth taking your kids to? Is it a fun, entertaining kids movie? And will you have a good time watching it as a family? And I can definitely say, yes, you will. It's very weird. It's very fantastical. The characters are very upbeat and over the top and silly, especially the character who's Silky, who's just this very precocious, very upbeat, fun, energetic character. And you have Moonface, who's kind of the more dour character, who's played by Nonso and Anozie and stuff like that. And it starts to build upon itself as it moves along. So think of Wreck-It Ralph, the Sugar Drop Land or whatever it was, and think of, like I said, Nanny McPhee, that type of scenario. And that's kind of what you're getting with this movie. It's not the greatest movie in the world. I think it has its problems. But if you're willing to go with it for, I think it's like an hour and 50 minutes, if you're willing to kind of let it sink into you as a movie, you'll get past the flaws and the weird characters and the over-top sugariness to the movie and the fact that it plays off tropes and stuff like that. And I think it does a successful job, and you kind of, as long as you go with it, you become kind of enthralled with the story of growing up as, a young kid, growing up in a world that is very different and hard to deal with, and dealing with parents who are struggling to make meets end and struggling to, deal with the grandmother who wants them to go back, and dealing with, just the age of technology and just forgetting who you are and forgetting what you are. That's what this movie does, and does pretty well. And I think Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy, who play the parents, do a really nice job. And they're those very go-getting parents that are willing to do anything for their kids. And it is nice to see that these kids are very tropey, so they're very Peter Pan-esque, where you have, Beth, who's like the technology-driven girl, who kind of comes and slowly turns, and then you have Joe, who's kind of in the middle, who just wants to have fun, and then you have Fran, who is trying to find her place in the world, and she's young and she finds this magical mystery place, and it really kind of sets itself apart in that spectrum. And I think it does a really nice job. I think having the writer of Paddington 2 do this type of movie, I think the writer also did Wonka, the one with Timothy Chalamet, so this is really in their wheelhouse. So I think it does a really decent job, and I think the characters are fun, and I think the set pieces are fun, and I think the clothing and the visual flair is fun. I think it's a little too sugary for my taste sometimes, but I think the world is just kind of cool. They go up to this up this tall ladder to this world where you can eat all these sugary treats, which I know kids love. It reminds me of Sheep Detective a little bit, with that just kind of fantastical feel and fun feel to it. So I think that's what you're getting into. But all the magical characters like, Nicola Coughlan, who plays Silky, and Nonso and Anozie, and Jessica Gunning, and, Simon Farmby and stuff like that. It really does do a nice job. And there are some, it's interesting to watch this family not have electricity, which is how do you play with that story a little bit. So it's fun for what it's worth. But to be fairly honest, the one thing that did bother me a little bit, and it came as a surprise, is how little Rebecca Ferguson is in this movie. The things she does, she's like the antagonist a little bit more. The antagonist is more of just growing up and forgetting things. But she kind of plays the antagonist, and she's like a teacher / evil person. She's kind of confronted and acknowledged by the different characters in this movie. But she plays Dame Snap. She's a head mistress of this weird school. And she's barely in the movie for 10 minutes. It's an hour and 50-minute movie. Throw Rebecca Ferguson in there more. Maybe she's in the other stories that like I said, I've never read these stories, so I don't know much about it. But maybe she's in the other stories. Maybe she has more pull in those movies, or those books. But here, she's just not given enough to do. And once again, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's Rebecca Ferguson. She's one of the best actresses working today. So that's just how I feel. My kind of negatives. And the movie just kind of, it's a little, like I keep saying, it's a little too sugary. It's a little too on the nose sometimes with what it's trying to do, but it's a fun, entertaining movie. It's not going to do very well in the States, I'm sure, because you have, other big budget movies coming out, but it's a movie that if you know the books, I'm sure it does a pretty nice job of adapting the book. And I think it's good. I think all the performances from the young kids and the adults and the fairy tale creatures or fantasy creatures are fun, and they lead to nice places and has a great fun payoff and endings. But that's my take on the Magic Faraway Tree. Once again, it's coming in theaters very shortly, so there you go. Anyways, with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'm actually curious in the comments below, have you read this book? Do you know much about it? When you watch this movie, let me know how it compares to the book, because I'm curious. But if you've seen it, let me know that as well. And let me know if Rebecca Ferguson's Dame Snap character is in it more, because I'd be more interested to know about that. Otherwise, let me know. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top. The fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.